Chapter 1. The Unexpected Encounter. The night gradually descended and the lights from the chandeliers shimmered, reflecting off the sparkling gowns, creating a mysterious and extravagant atmosphere at the ball in Count Alexander's castle. The sounds of lively conversations and graceful dances all showcased the prosperity of the aristocratic world. Amidst this, Isabella, the young lady of the Fitzroy family, felt out of place in the crowd, surrounded by the heavy expectations of society. Isabella was a beautiful and intelligent girl, but unlike other young ladies, she didn't dream of a grand wedding or a life of luxury with a noble husband. She only wanted a life of freedom, unbound by the standards society imposed on aristocratic women. However, tonight, Isabella could not escape the expectations of her family and society. She sat on a long sofa by the window, the soft light from the yellow lamps shining through the thin silk curtains, accentuating her delicate beauty. Isabella gazed out at the moonlit reflection on the surface of the lake, a tranquil scene that stood in stark contrast to the bustle inside the castle. But in that silence, she felt a deep loneliness. The party was at its peak, with lively dances and dazzling conversations. But Isabella couldn't join in the festive atmosphere. The gazes and whispered talks surrounding her made her feel as though she was being watched, as though every gesture and every word of hers was subject to scrutiny. This time, she couldn't avoid the unwanted attention of the aristocracy, who were always ready to point out others' mistakes to elevate their own status. She couldn't forget the whispers about a small action that had tarnished her family's reputation. Just a casual gesture, a smile too much to a man who wasn't a close acquaintance, and she had become the object of everyone's attention. Even though it was just an unintentional act, the aristocratic society could not forgive such mistakes. Isabella tried to slip away from the crowd. She walked along a dimly lit corridor where old paintings and towering stone columns created a sense of tranquility and unfamiliarity. She felt a sense of relief when no more prying eyes followed her, but inside she couldn't shake the feeling of unease. She needed a private moment, a place where she could breathe without fear of being judged. As she passed a large stone pillar in the ballroom, Isabella unexpectedly collided with someone. A hand reached out, gently grasping hers, helping her regain her balance. "Sorry, my lady, I didn't mean to disturb you," a warm voice broke the silence. Isabella looked up, and her eyes met those of a man she hadn't expected to see. The man was tall, with skin as pale as snow and thick black hair, his sharp eyes like a blade. It was none other than Count Alexander, the most powerful man in the aristocracy. He was famous not only for his wealth, but also for his charm and mysterious personality. His image was often seen at balls, but Isabella never imagined she would meet him in such a situation. She was a little surprised and also felt a strange unfamiliarity. Count Alexander was not the type of man she would usually notice. He was a noble with power, and she was just a young lady who wished to uphold her honor. But his eyes, deep, full of understanding, made her feel drawn into a different world, a world without societal expectations and strict rules. "Thank you, my lord," Isabella said softly, quickly withdrawing her hand from the warmth of his grip, but he didn't immediately let go. "My lady, I'm afraid I might be able to help you keep your balance better if you don't rush like that," the Count smiled, his eyes bright with concern. Isabella felt awkward, a strange sensation stirring within her. She glanced around, hoping no one had seen the scene. She was the daughter of an aristocratic family, and now was not the time to show any sign of weakness. "You don't need to worry about me," Isabella said, though her voice sounded a little uneasy. She felt something strange in the Count's words. Those words made her feel more at ease than worried. "But I am quite concerned, my lady," the Count replied, his expression turning serious. "Tonight is an important night, and I don't want you to be hurt by things that are unnecessary." For the first time that night, Isabella felt a sincere concern from someone else. Part of her, though still hesitant, sensed comfort in his words. She smiled softly, thanked him, and began to walk away. But the Count's gaze followed her. She had no idea that this brief encounter would be the beginning of a complicated relationship, one she could not easily escape, and one that would change her life forever. ChatGPT deny, Chapter 2, A Step Toward Affection. After the ball, Isabella couldn't shake the image of Count Alexander from her mind. Despite her attempts to forget the encounter, His gaze, the gentleness in his every gesture, haunted her like an unshakable ghost. She didn't understand why she felt this way. The Count was a powerful man with a prominent reputation and surrounded by beautiful women. She could never be part of his world. Yet, the truth was, after that night, she couldn't help but think about him. Every time she walked through the castle's halls, she imagined him appearing, as if every corner of the castle was a place where she might run into him again. A week after the ball, Isabella found herself standing in front of the large drawing room of the castle where another party was taking place. This time, she didn't feel as tense as before, although she still felt the gaze of everyone directed toward her. But it wasn't because she had caused a scandal. It was because of the rumors about her relationship with the Count. Those around her knew well that Isabella was not the type to easily fall for the charm of a powerful man, and that only made them more curious about her. As she entered the ballroom, her eyes instinctively searched for Count Alexander, and as if drawn by some inevitable force, she saw him standing in a corner of the room, talking with other nobles. His expression was calm, but his eyes were as sharp as ever. However, unlike before, this time it wasn't him seeking her out. Isabella didn't know what to do. She stood there feeling like a lost bird in the lavish world of the aristocrats. Should she approach him? Or should she continue to keep her distance and avoid the emotions surging in her heart? And then, as she stood still amidst the crowd, a hand once again reached out and gently placed itself on her shoulder. Isabella startled and turned around, and unsurprisingly, it was Count Alexander. "Miss Fitzroy, I hope I haven't disturbed you," the Count smiled, his voice confident yet gentle. "But if you don't mind, I would like to invite you to dance." This time, Isabella didn't feel the awkwardness she had felt before. Although she knew she couldn't refuse a dance invitation from such a powerful man, she still felt a strange sensation rising within her, a feeling she couldn't explain. She raised her head and looked directly into the bright eyes of the Count. His gaze seemed to see through all her thoughts, and when his lips curved into a slight smile, she couldn't refuse. She accepted his invitation to dance, and immediately the Count took her hand and led her to the center of the dance floor. The rhythm of the music gently enveloped them. Their steps were graceful, flowing together as if they had been dancing for years. Isabella felt a kind of magic in every movement. Suddenly, all eyes were on them, but she no longer felt embarrassed or scrutinized. All she could feel at that moment were the strong hands of the Count holding her, the warmth of his body passing to her, and the sense that there was a deep connection between them. "Miss Fitzroy, you don't need to worry about the rumors surrounding us," the Count whispered gently in her ear, his voice almost blending with the music. "We are both adults and know how to face challenges." Isabella looked at him, unable to speak. She couldn't say anything, because at that moment, her heart was drowning in a whirlwind of emotions. She just nodded slightly, trying to suppress the turbulence within her. "I never thought I'd have the chance to dance with a man like you," she admitted, her voice no longer as shy as before. "But perhaps I was wrong to think things would be that simple." The Count looked at her for a long moment, his gaze holding a depth that Isabella couldn't fully understand. He didn't answer immediately, simply staring at her, as if searching for something in her soul. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. "You can be free, Miss Fitzroy. We can be friends, or perhaps something more, but I don't want you to feel bound by anything." The Count's words confused her more than ever. She didn't know if he was speaking from the heart or if it was just the polite words of an aristocrat. But when he tightened his grip on her hand and looked into her eyes, Isabella felt an undeniable connection. Another step, and she had drawn closer to the heart of Count Alexander. And whether she wanted it or not, she knew that their relationship wouldn't be as simple as she had once thought. Chapter 3. The Growing Relationship. That dance left an unforgettable impression on Isabella. When the music stopped and their steps ended, she felt as though she had stepped out of a dream. But that dream wasn't simply a dance at a party. It marked the beginning of a complex relationship that she couldn't easily escape. Since that night, Count Alexander had become a frequent presence in Isabella's life. Each time she attended a party or family gathering, he was there. Sometimes just a glance from across the room, other times a brief conversation that was always captivating. These encounters were no longer simple. they carried with them questions in her heart. Every time she looked into the Count's eyes, Isabella felt something unexplainable, a strange attraction she could not resist. The Count was no longer a stranger to her. He was the man she saw at the parties, the man with whom every conversation left a conflicting emotion within her. He was never overly eager, but whenever he appeared, Isabella felt herself being pulled into a vortex with no way out. Gradually, they began to share more stories, more thoughts. The Count was no longer just a man Isabella had heard about in rumors or social stories. He had become an integral part of her life, someone she could not imagine her world without. He always stood by her at parties, making her feel as if she was an important part of his life. One morning as Isabella was walking through the vast gardens of her family estate, she happened to come across the Count. He was standing by the lake, lone, but it seemed as if he was waiting for someone. When he saw her, he smiled gently, walked over and greeted her. "Good morning, Miss Fitzroy. You look truly beautiful today," the Count said, his gaze filled with sincerity, without a trace of pretense. Isabella couldn't deny that her heart began to beat faster at his compliment. She wasn't the type to be easily won over by empty words, but with the Count, it was different. He wasn't saying these things just out of politeness. He genuinely meant them. "Thank you, my lord, but today I'm not in the mood to talk about compliments," Isabella replied, her voice tinged with a hint of sadness. She didn't want to admit it to herself, but she felt as though she was drowning in a feeling she couldn't escape. The Count looked at her for a long moment, as though he was thinking about what she had just said. He stepped closer, just a few steps away from her. His thick black hair swayed gently in the breeze, creating an irresistible charm. Isabella could feel the warmth radiating from him, even though they were standing just a short distance apart. "Miss Fitzroy, may I ask you something?" The Count spoke, his voice not as serious as before. This time he spoke gently, as if trying to open up. "Of course you may ask," Isabella replied, though she still felt uneasy inside. She wasn't sure if she could keep her composure in this situation, but she felt that this conversation would be unlike any other. "Have you ever wondered why I always appear at the parties you attend?" the Count asked, his eyes locking onto hers, unwavering. Isabella was surprised by his question. She had never thought about this seriously. Although she had noticed the Count always being present at the parties, she had never questioned the reason. Perhaps it was just a coincidence, or simply because he was part of this aristocratic circle. I, I never thought about that," Isabella answered, feeling a bit awkward. "But you're surely a very busy man, my lord. I thought attending parties was just a part of your life." The Count smiled gently, as though he had already guessed her answer. "You're right, but I attend these parties not just for business or honor, but because I want to meet you." The Count's words left Isabella stunned, but she couldn't hide the growing unease within her. That feeling intensified when she realized that he wasn't saying these words out of formality or by accident. He truly wanted to meet her, and that thought made her heart stir with both excitement and fear. "You want to meet me? Why is that?" Isabella asked, trying to maintain her composure, though her heart was racing. The Count didn't answer right away. He simply looked at her, as though trying to find the right words. After a moment of silence, he finally spoke, his voice slightly lower than before. "I can't explain everything, Miss Fitzroy, but I feel that this relationship cannot be a coincidence. There is a connection between us that I can't explain." Isabella didn't know what to say. The Count's words made her feel uncertain, but at the same time they also made her realize that something deep and meaningful was happening between them. Their relationship was gradually becoming more complex. Once again, Isabella recognized that she couldn't easily escape the emotions that were growing stronger inside her. And perhaps she had begun to realize that she couldn't just stand on the sidelines of Count Alexander's life. Chapter 4. Possession. In the days that followed, the relationship between Isabella and Count Alexander grew more ambiguous and elusive. Each time they met, the atmosphere between them seemed more tense, yet irresistibly magnetic. Isabella could not deny that she was gradually feeling that she could not escape his attraction, whether she wanted to or not. But the closer they became, the more she felt she was being restrained, as if an invisible thread was tightening around her neck. Despite always appearing at parties and social gatherings, Count Alexander maintained just the right distance so that Isabella wouldn't feel overwhelmed. He cared for her, but in his own way, a way that no one could explain. His gazes, his inquiries about her health, his simple phrases like, "Miss Fitzroy, I cannot take my eyes off you," all made her feel a sense of possession in his words. One weekend afternoon, as Isabella stood by the window of the drawing room, looking out at her family's vast garden, she suddenly heard a soft knock on the door. Her heart skipped a beat because she knew who was standing outside. She stood up, walked to the door, and wasn't surprised to find Count Alexander standing there, his usual calm expression, but his eyes hiding something she couldn't decipher. "Good afternoon, Miss Fitzroy. May I come in?" the Count said, his voice as warm as usual, but this time carrying a certain urgency. Isabella hesitated for a moment, but then nodded. She couldn't refuse him, knowing he always appeared at moments she couldn't avoid. The door opened wider and Count Alexander stepped inside. This time, the closeness between them was no longer the same. The distance between them seemed to have vanished, replaced by an atmosphere thick with tension, full of anticipation. "Miss Fitzroy, are you free today? I would like to talk to you about a few things," the Count said, his eyes never leaving her. "Certainly, my lord." "What would you like to discuss?" Isabella asked, though she couldn't shake the uneasy feeling inside. She couldn't understand why he wanted to meet her now. Could it be a sincere interest, or just another way for him to pull her closer to his ideals and purposes? The Count sat down across from her, not rushing to answer. He quietly observed her, his gaze piercing as though searching for something in her heart. Finally, after a pause, he spoke in a low voice. "Isabella, I feel that there is a deep connection between us, but I cannot help but feel something different when you are with me. I can't explain it clearly, but I need you to understand that I cannot let you slip away from me." The Count's words hit Isabella like a powerful wave crashing into her heart. She didn't know how to react to this confession. She couldn't deny that she had felt a shift in their relationship, but she had never expected him to speak so frankly about it. "What do you mean, Count?" Isabella tried to remain calm, but she couldn't hide the confusion in her voice. "Don't you think we are just friends? The things you are saying are so unfamiliar to me." The Count wasn't surprised by her response. He looked into her eyes, his gaze resolute and carrying something deeper, as though he had prepared for this moment long ago. "You may think that I only want to be friends, but I know that I need you more than that. I cannot look at you just as a friend or a passerby. Your presence in my life is not a coincidence, but something I cannot ignore," the Count said, his voice firm yet gentle. Isabella felt overwhelmed by his words. She had never thought that the Count felt so strongly about her. But a part of her was also filled with fear. She couldn't allow herself to be possessed, to become a part of his world where everything could be manipulated and controlled. "Do you really think I will agree to that?" Isabella said, her voice almost choking. "I am not someone you can own. I have my own life, and I don't want to be bound." The Count remained silent for a long moment, as if contemplating her words. Finally, he spoke, his voice softer now. "I don't want to possess you, Isabella. I just want you to understand that I need you by my side, and I will do everything to show you that I can be someone you trust. Our relationship is not a power struggle, but a deep connection between two souls." The Count's words left Isabella's heart in turmoil. She didn't know what to do with the feelings he had for her. A part of her wanted to believe him, but another part was terrified by the sense of possession she felt. She couldn't easily accept a relationship where she felt she had no control. "What do you want from me, Count?" Isabella asked, her voice trembling with concern. The Count stood up and stepped closer to her, his eyes still locked onto hers. "I only want your heart, Isabella, and I will never let you go." Chapter 5. The Secret Unveiled. In the days following the intense conversation between Isabella and Count Alexander, she found herself trapped in a whirlwind of emotions she could not explain. Their relationship seemed to have entered a new phase, no longer just the casual encounters of two nobles. The Count had made his feelings clear, expressing his interest and affection for her, but Isabella was not yet ready to fully embrace them. She feared that she might be pulled into a relationship she couldn't control, one where the Count could take ownership of everything in her life. She tried to avoid encounters with the Count, but he always sought her out. Every time she thought she could escape his influence, he appeared again, gentle but determined. She could not refuse him, could not ignore his care, yet her heart was filled with doubts and fears. Did the Count truly love her, or was he simply looking for a way to possess her, to control her life as he did everything else in this world? Then one day while she was in her study, a letter was delivered to her. Isabella opened the letter and read it, her eyes unable to believe what she was seeing. It was a letter from an old friend of the Count's, someone who had once been his close companion before everything changed. The letter read, "Alan, Miss Fitzroy, I regret to inform you that I cannot allow you to continue living in ambiguity. Count Alexander is not the man you think he is. He once had a deep relationship with a woman he loved very much, but for reasons none of us could understand, she left. Since then, the Count has become cold and unable to truly love anyone. He keeps secrets about his past, and I fear that he is hiding something from you that you need to know." Isabella read the letter over and over, feeling a turmoil in her chest. The secret revealed by the Count's friend made her reconsider everything the Count had told her. He had said he needed her, that he wanted her by his side, but could he truly love her? Or was he just trying to ease the pain of his past? She couldn't stop thinking about that question. Why had the Count hidden his past? Why had he chosen silence about what had happened when everyone around him had a right to know? His silence only made her more suspicious and confused. She couldn't continue in this relationship without the truth. The next day, when the Count came to visit her at Fitzroy Castle, Isabella decided to confront him. She couldn't keep avoiding him and living in ambiguity. She needed to know the truth. "Count," Isabella said when he entered the drawing room, "I need to speak with you about something important." The Count stopped, his gaze slightly tilting, as if anticipating that this conversation would not be an ordinary one. "Miss Fitzroy, is something troubling you?" he asked, his voice tinged with concern, yet still composed. "I just received a letter from one of your old friends," Isabella said, her voice cold, "and it contained information I cannot ignore. The letter says you have a past that you've never shared with me, a past involving a woman you love very much. You've kept that from me, haven't you, Count?" The Count's expression changed immediately. He no longer wore his usual calm demeanor. The worry in his eyes made Isabella's heart race. He didn't speak right away, but stood still, as if contemplating how to answer her. "Isabella, I didn't want to keep secrets from you," the Count finally spoke, his voice deep and heavy. "But there is a reason I cannot speak of my past. That woman, she was an important part of my life, but she left suddenly. I didn't want to bring up painful memories, and I didn't want you to bear that pain with me." Isabella felt a pang in her heart as she heard his words. She didn't know whether she should believe him. She wanted to, but the doubts wouldn't disappear. Could the Count truly love her, or was he simply trying to find a replacement for the woman he had lost? "But you've hidden it from me for so long, Count," Isabella said, her voice becoming weaker. "Why didn't you tell me about your past? Why let me find out the truth through rumors?" The Count walked closer to her, his gaze filled with anguish. "Isabella, I couldn't share my past because I feared it would hurt you. I love you, but I don't want to drag you into the painful things from my past. I'm afraid that if I share everything with you, you will no longer look at me the same way." Isabella felt her heart tighten. She looked into the Count's eyes, and a part of her believed the sincerity in his words, but another part of her couldn't ignore the secrets he had kept. "You love me, but I cannot love someone who hasn't shared everything with me," she said, her voice ringing in the quiet room. "I can't continue in this relationship if I don't know the truth." Chapter 6. A choice between freedom and love. Isabella stepped out of the room, her heart heavy with emotion. The words of Count Alexander still echoed in her mind. He loved her, yet he had kept his past hidden. How could she continue to trust a man she couldn't fully understand? Their relationship, though full of allure and attraction, was clouded by the secrets the Count still chose to keep. She didn't know what to do, but one thing was certain. She couldn't keep walking in the dark, living in this uncertainty. She couldn't escape the conflict in her heart. Part of her wanted to continue loving the Count, to feel the comfort and care he offered her, But another part of her feared that she would be dragged into a relationship where she had no freedom, a relationship that she couldn't control. Freedom was more important to her than anything else, but love was a powerful wave that she couldn't resist. That night, Isabella couldn't sleep. Thoughts of the Count, of the things he had said, kept swirling in her mind. She didn't know where she stood in their relationship, and that made her feel lost. She had lived an independent, free life, but now she felt as though she was being suffocated by a relationship she couldn't escape. Could she love someone without knowing the whole truth about him? Could love be enough to make her sacrifice her freedom? The next morning, Isabella decided she had to face the questions she couldn't avoid. She couldn't keep living in ambiguity. She couldn't keep pretending she didn't have a choice. She had to make a decision. She made her way to the Count's castle, where he frequently appeared. Each step she took felt heavier, as if each step was a crucial decision. The castle, with its ancient stone walls and quiet atmosphere, seemed to reflect her mood. She entered the drawing room where the Count was sitting. His face was calm, but his eyes held an unmistakable look of concern, as if he already knew she would come. "Miss Fitzroy," the Count stood as he saw her. "You've come to speak with me, haven't you? I feel that today we will have an important conversation." Isabella looked into his eyes, sensing sincerity, but also a mystery hidden deep within them. "Count, I can't continue like this. I need to know about your past. I can't love someone I don't know everything about." The Count froze for a moment, his expression turning serious. He knew this moment would come, but he hadn't expected it to arrive so soon. "Isabella, I understand how you feel, but there are things from my past that I can't share. They're not things I want to remember, and I don't want to drag you into old wounds. I love you, but my past is something I want to leave behind." Isabella couldn't stop feeling the pain in his voice, but she couldn't keep blindly trusting him. She needed the truth. She couldn't continue in this relationship without clarity. Love can't be built on secrets, Count. If you truly love me, you would share everything with me. You wouldn't make me find out the truth through rumors. The Count looked at her for a long moment, then sighed deeply. "You're right, I was wrong to keep things from you for so long. But I didn't know how to tell you these things. It's not something I want you to carry in your heart." He stood up and walked toward her, but this time there was no coldness in his demeanor. He looked at her with eyes full of sorrow. "Isabella, you know, I love you more than you can imagine, but I don't want you to sacrifice your freedom for me. You could live without me, but I can't live without you. I won't force you to stay with me, but I hope that one day you'll choose me." Isabella didn't know how to respond to these words. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, but she also sensed the possessiveness in them. The Count loved her, but would that love be enough for her to sacrifice her freedom? She stood still, her hands clenched, as if trying to resist the overwhelming feelings inside her. "Count, I can't choose between love and freedom. I can't allow myself to be trapped in a relationship I can't control. I love you, but I can't lose myself. I can't live for someone else, even if that person is you." The Count looked at her, his face contemplative, as if he were battling with his own emotions. Finally, he gently took her hand and said, "If you love me, I will never make you lose yourself. I will give you your freedom, Isabella. But I hope that one day you will choose me." Isabella felt her heart breaking. She didn't know if it was possible to have both freedom and love at the same time. But one thing she knew for sure was that she couldn't give up herself. Chapter 7. Love and Loss. The day after her conversation with Count Alexander, Isabella couldn't stop thinking about what had been said. His words still echoed in her mind. "I will give you freedom, Isabella, but I hope that one day you will choose me." Those words, though full of affection and sincerity, made her feel as if she were standing at a crossroads with no way back. Had she ever imagined that she would find herself in this position? On one side, love, the powerful allure of the Count, a man who had undeniably captured her heart. On the other side, freedom, the self she had always cherished, unwilling to be controlled by anyone, no matter how passionate the love. For days, Isabella struggled with this difficult decision. Every time she thought she had found an answer, something made her heart hesitate. She loved the Count, but she didn't want to lose herself in this relationship. She decided to meet him again to clarify the things she couldn't fully understand. Despite the anxiety she still felt, she knew she couldn't let the Count remain a stranger in her life forever. She couldn't allow the uncertainty and secrets to continue tainting their relationship. The Count's castle, once a place of grandeur and power, no longer impressed her as it once had. Each step she took in the vast space made her feel more lost. But she knew she couldn't turn back. She couldn't retreat. Their relationship, it needed to be clarified. When she entered the Count's drawing room, he was standing by the window, gazing outside. The soft light of the late afternoon accentuated the calmness in his every movement, but she could feel the unease lingering within, even though he showed no sign of it. The Count turned to her, his eyes sparkling, but there was a waiting look in them, as if he knew this meeting would change everything. "Isabella," he said, his voice gentle but firm, "I know you've been thinking a lot, and I understand how you feel. I don't want to force you into something you don't want, but I love you. This love isn't something I can control, and I can't live without you." Isabella didn't answer right away. She stood there, feeling each word from the Count. He loved her, but could she accept that love without losing herself? Why did love have to come with possession and secrets? Was she just a part of his world, or was she merely a stranger passing through? "I can't live in ambiguity anymore, Count," Isabella said, her voice hoarse from the suppressed anxiety. "I need to know about your past. I can't continue loving someone I don't fully understand. Is your love sincere enough for you to share everything? Can I trust that I am the only one in your heart?" The Count stood still, his eyes suddenly filled with pain. He took a step toward her, a gesture no one in the room would have expected. He gently took her hand, as if trying to hold her back, but at the same time as though he feared she would slip away. "Isabella," the Count spoke softly but firmly, "there's something I've never told you. The woman I loved before is not someone I could easily forget. She was a part of me, a part I can't separate. I've kept her in my heart all these years, and I didn't want you to bear that pain with me. But I realize that my love for you can't be hidden forever. I can't live in the past, but I don't want to lose you." Isabella stood motionless, feeling the anguish in his voice. His words were a powerful shock, yet they also made her feel a deeper connection. He was not a perfect man, and his past held secrets she couldn't fully understand. But in that moment, Isabella realized that his love for her was not just possession, it was real pain, a love he didn't know how to deal with. She sighed, feeling her heart tighten. "Count, I don't know if I can love someone whose past is so shrouded in mystery, but I can't deny that I love you. That terrifies me, because I don't know if I can keep myself in this relationship." The Count looked at her, his face contemplative, as if he were battling his own emotions. Finally, he gently took her hand and said, "If you love me, I will never make you lose yourself. I will give you your freedom, Isabella. But I hope that one day you will choose me." Isabella felt her heart break. She didn't know if it was possible to have both freedom and love at the same time. But one thing she knew for sure was that she couldn't give up herself. "I can't make a decision right now, Count," she whispered, her hands clenched tightly, as if holding on to something important. "I need time to think about everything that's happened." The Count nodded gently, his eyes full of understanding and love. "I will wait for you, Isabella. No matter how long it takes, I will wait." Chapter 8, The Truth Revealed. A week had passed since Isabella and Count Alexander had their important conversation in the drawing room. Although the Count's words had made her heart race, she could not decide hastily. She needed time to think and process all the conflicting emotions rising within her. She couldn't simply let love guide her, she also had to face the Count's past, something she had never truly known. Time passed, yet Isabella could not escape the sense of restlessness. Every night as she tried to close her eyes and sleep, the image of the Count would appear in her mind. She thought about his words, about the secrets he still kept hidden. She wondered if she was strong enough to face those secrets, or if she would remain at this crossroads, unable to choose a path. One afternoon, while Isabella was walking through the Fitzroy family garden, she encountered someone unexpected. Victor, an old friend of the Count's, the one who had sent her the letter earlier. He stood alone under a large tree, his eyes weary, and it seemed like he was waiting for someone. When he saw Isabella, he smiled faintly, but there was something in his gaze that made her uneasy. "Miss Fitzroy, may I trouble you for a moment?" Victor said, his voice calm but patient. "I would like to talk to you about the Count." Isabella paused, her surprise evident. "What would you like to say about the Count?" she asked, her voice wary. She didn't know whether this conversation was one she had been waiting for, but she couldn't refuse an old friend of the Count, especially if he could provide the answers she had been searching for. Victor looked at her for a long moment, as though weighing whether or not to share what he knew. Finally, he spoke. "The Count hasn't told you everything about his past, but I think you have a right to know. He once loved a woman before he met you, a woman he could never forget, and she left him suddenly. But it's not as simple as that. She didn't leave because of death or betrayal, but because of a decision the Count made, a decision he couldn't change." Isabella felt a chill run down her spine. She had sensed something strange about the Count, but she never imagined it would be this complicated. "So, who was this woman?" she asked, trying to maintain her composure. Victor sighed, his eyes darkening as if he were reliving painful memories. "Her name was Eleanor. She was the one the Count loved most in his life, but they were torn apart by an event the Count has never told anyone about. Eleanor didn't leave because of death or betrayal, but because of a decision the Count made, one that he believed he couldn't undo. And since then, he has never truly loved anyone again until he met you." Isabella stood silent. She couldn't imagine that the Count had carried such a great pain inside him. She thought about the love he had for her, but could she be the one to replace Eleanor in his heart? Could she endure knowing that the Count loved her for a reason other than genuine affection, because she was the only one who could make him forget the pain of his past? "Then why hasn't the Count told me all of this?" Isabella asked, her voice trembling. "Why has he kept this from me?" Victor looked at her with sympathy in his eyes. "He didn't want to hurt you. The Count feared that if you knew the truth, you wouldn't look at him the same way. He's afraid you'll leave him, just like Eleanor did. But his silence has only made things worse." Isabella stood motionless, her heart heavy. She thought about the Count, about the love he had for her. But now everything seemed more complicated than ever. She couldn't keep living in ambiguity. She couldn't keep loving someone she didn't fully understand. Finally, she decided she had to speak with the Count again. She couldn't continue living with anxiety and doubt. She needed the truth. When she arrived at the Count's castle, her heart pounded faster than ever. This time, she no longer felt fear or anxiety. She just wanted to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. When the Count saw her, he didn't say anything but stood still, waiting. His eyes were filled with suspicion, as if he knew she had uncovered part of the truth. "Count," Isabella said, her voice stronger than ever. "I know about Eleanor. I know that you loved her, and that she left because of a decision you couldn't change. But you can't keep hiding your past from me. I love you, but I can't love someone I don't fully understand." The Count looked at her, his eyes no longer cold, but filled with sorrow, a pain he had kept hidden for so long. He stepped closer to her, his voice hoarse as he spoke. "Isabella, I'm sorry. I didn't want to hide anything from you. I don't know how to deal with this pain, but I love you, and I'll do anything for you to forgive me." Isabella felt the pain in the Count's words, and she knew that he truly loved her. But was love enough to heal all the wounds of the past? She didn't know, but she knew that at least for now, she couldn't walk away from him. Chapter 9, The Final Decision. Isabella could hardly believe she was standing at the crossroads of such an important choice. She had learned the truth about the Count, the pain he had carried for so many years. She understood that his love for her wasn't just affection, but a healing balm for his old wounds, a release from the past that he couldn't let go of. But she also realized that she couldn't love someone without fully understanding him, that she couldn't live in a relationship that she couldn't control. For Isabella, love had always come with freedom. She couldn't let herself be bound by possession, no matter how deep the love was. But when faced with the Count, she felt an irresistible force. He loved her, and she loved him. But between love and freedom, which path should she choose? She had once thought that she could easily overlook the pain in the Count's past, but now she couldn't continue living in uncertainty. She had to make a clear decision, even if that decision might hurt them both. Isabella returned to the Count's castle one cloudy afternoon. The sky was overcast, and the soft light of the sunset streamed through the windows, creating an emotional atmosphere. She walked into the drawing room where the Count was sitting alone. His gaze met hers when she entered, but there was no rush or waiting in his eyes. He knew she would come. He knew she couldn't escape her feelings forever. "Miss Fitzroy," he put, his voice gentle but sincere. "You've come to speak with me, haven't you? I know we can't keep living in uncertainty." Isabella stood still, her hands clenched tightly. Every word the Count spoke was like a wave pulling her into a world she couldn't escape. She wanted to voice all her thoughts, but somehow all the words seemed to get caught in her throat. "Count," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "I've thought a lot about everything. About us. About what you've shared with me. I love you, but I can't live in darkness forever. I need to know everything, from your past to your present. I can't continue loving someone I don't fully understand. I can't love someone I feel is keeping me outside of their life." The Count stood silent for a moment, his eyes filled with pain. "Isabella, I don't want to hide anything from you anymore. But there are things in my past that I can't change. I love you, but I can't let go of what's gone. Those wounds will never heal, and I don't want you to bear them." Isabella felt her heart tear apart. She was too familiar with this conflict, the pull between love and the fear of loss. She couldn't let her love become a burden to the Count, but she also couldn't let him continue living in darkness. "So what do you want from me, Count?" Isabella asked, her voice firm but full of resolve. "Do you want me to continue loving you without knowing anything about your past?" "I can't do that. I can't live in doubt." The Count stood up and walked toward her. He looked at her, his eyes filled with agony, as if he were struggling with his own emotions. "Isabella, I can't love you the way you want if I can't let go of my past, but I don't want to lose you. I will do everything to show you that my love for you is real. I don't want you to feel like you're part of a past that I can't change." Isabella looked at him, feeling the sincerity in his eyes, but she also knew that love couldn't just be words. It had to be transparency, clarity, and most of all, freedom. "Count, I love you, but I can't love someone who can't share everything with me," Isabella said, her voice soft but full of determination. "Your love can't be the reason for me to give up my freedom. I can't love you if I feel like I'm being bound in a relationship I can't fully understand." The Count looked at her, his eyes darkening. He stood there silent for a moment. "So, you've made your decision?" he asked, his voice low, filled with disappointment. Isabella's heart ached. She didn't want to hurt him, but she knew she had to do what was right for herself and for him. "I can't continue living in uncertainty, Count. I love you, but I can't live with secrets. I need time. I need to be free to find my own path." The Count didn't speak anymore. He turned and slowly walked away, as if he had realized this moment was inevitable. Isabella watched him go, her heart breaking. She loved him, but she couldn't continue living in anxiety, in the unknown. "Maybe one day we'll find our way," she whispered. She turned and walked out of the room, and this time, she no longer felt fear. She had made her decision, and no matter how painful it was, she knew she would have to live with that choice. Chapter 10, Happiness or Pain. A week had passed since Isabella's conversation with Count Alexander, and her heart remained in turmoil over the decision she had made. Although she had tried to convince herself that it was the right choice, every time she thought of the Count, a sense of emptiness overwhelmed her. She loved him, but was that love enough for her to give up her freedom? Or had she made the right choice in walking away from him? She didn't know, and the more she thought about it, the more she felt lost in her own emotions. Everything seemed complicated, and her heart felt as if it were being torn in two. This morning, Isabella decided to go outside for a walk in the Fitzroy family garden. She needed a quiet space to think more clearly about what she truly wanted. She walked between rows of lush trees, feeling the fresh air and listening to the birds singing in the distance. But no matter how beautiful the scenery around her was, her heart still couldn't find peace. She stopped by a small pond in the garden, a place where she had once walked with the Count during the early days of their relationship. when everything was light and carefree. The surroundings were the same, but her heart was now filled with wounds that couldn't be healed. "Miss Fitzroy," a familiar voice called from behind her. Isabella turned around and, unsurprisingly, she saw the Count standing there, looking at her with eyes full of concern. He always knew how to appear at the right moment, and this time was no exception. Despite the pain, despite the exhaustion, he still couldn't stay away from her. "Count," she said, her voice lowering, "what brings you here?" The Count stepped closer, looking into her eyes with a resolve that could not be denied. "Isabella, I've thought a lot about what we said, and I know I was wrong not to share everything with you. But I can't let you walk away from me. I can't let you live in doubt." Isabella felt a whirlwind of emotions inside her. She knew she couldn't go back. She couldn't change her decision. But when facing the Count, she couldn't help but feel the powerful surge of emotion in her heart. "I've made my decision, Count. I can't continue living in this relationship if I don't know the full truth about you. I need time. I need space to understand everything." The Count stared at her for a long time, then nodded silently. "I understand, Isabella, but don't forget that I love you. I will always love you, no matter what decision you make. If you need time, I will wait. If you need space, I will give you all the space you need." The Count's words struck Isabella like a knife to the heart. She knew he loved her, but was that love enough for her to give up herself? Could she live by his side without losing herself? "Count, I can't live in anxiety forever. I can't continue loving you when you can't share everything with me. I need to know who you really are, and I need time to decide if I can live with this love." She felt as if her words were a farewell, even though she didn't want them to be. The Count stood silent for a moment, his eyes filled with sorrow. He walked toward her, but this time he didn't try to hold her hand or keep her with him. He just stood there looking at her, as if he knew that everything had reached its inevitable conclusion. "Isabella, if this is your choice, I won't force you. I love you, and I will always love you, but I can't ignore the fact that you need freedom. I can't keep you here if you don't want to stay with me. If you need to leave, I will let you go." Isabella looked into his eyes, and in that moment, she felt his strength and love in his gaze. She couldn't continue living in doubt and ignorance, but at the same time, she couldn't deny his love. "Count, I don't know where I will go, but I need time. I need to find myself again, and I need to face what I truly want. You love me, and I love you, but I can't continue in a relationship I can't control." She turned to leave, but just before she stepped away, she felt a gentle hand rest on her shoulder. The Count stood there, silent, but her heart felt everything he wanted to say. His love for her was real, but she needed to find her own path. Isabella turned back and looked at the Count one last time, and in that moment she realized that no matter what decision she made, the love between them would always be a part of her life. She couldn't live without him, but she also couldn't live for him and lose herself. She walked away, and the Count didn't stop her. He just stood there, watching her, as if accepting that sometimes love is also a sacrifice. Both of them knew that no matter how much they loved each other, love could not replace the freedom each person needed. And sometimes, to truly love someone, we must be willing to lose a part of ourselves.